Greetings! In this video I'll be painting a member of the Angels Encarmine Death Company. I've used an Infernus Marine as the base for this guy, and given him some upgrades from one of the Blood Angels upgrade kits. The head and the pauldron are 3D printed. You can check the description for more information about those. I started by priming the model black, then building up to a fully white model with a white scar. If you're following along you could use a white primer, like with a spray can. I just find it easier to do it this way. For my first step with the brush I wanted to get the red base coated. I used Mephiston red and painted in the wings of the Imperialis, as well as the eye lenses. Successors of the Blood Angels typically have a Death Company, which use red saltires across their armour. I painted thin lines where I roughly wanted the middle of the cross to be, then painted outwards from that. I did the same on the left gauntlet and the left pauldron. I also painted in the blood drop on the armorial and the tilt shield. I briefly went back to white scar to clean up around the eyes and around the saltires. Next, I decided to block in the black details with Abaddon black. The undersuit, the weapon casings, the pauldron trim, and the power pack received 2 thin coats. For the metallic details, I went with the tried and tested Iron Warriors, painting in the blades of the weapons, the power pack exhausts, and some of the details around the belt. I brought in Retributor armour for the parts I wanted gold. The skull on the Imperialis, the reliquary casing, the trim on the blood drop, and the handles of the melee weapons. Moving on to the leather now, trying out a new technique. I used Wyldwood contrast paint over the white, applying it softly in sweeping motions. Next, I applied Scarlet and Horde in the same manner to the parchment for the purity seal. Finally, for the contrast paints, I used Volupus pink for the wax of the purity seal. Going back to the leather, I used Mournfang brown to highlight around the edges. This is a very rich brown, which should sell the leather as fairly new. Trying to continue the highlight, I then switched to Doombull brown, but this was too red, too saturated, so I switched to Knight-Questor flesh to try and recover what I had. I'm not too happy with this, and if I did it again I'd probably stop with a Mournfang brown. For the text on the purity seal, I used some Abaddon black with a small brush, doing a few scribbles to imitate text. Back to the silver metallics now with Mournfang steel, going over a lot of the edges and dotting the rivets around the armour. Next, I used Mechanicus Standard Grey to highlight the black details. This was a simple edge highlight, though I painted in a few scratches to help break up the flat surfaces a bit. Now that most of the model is finished, I went back to the red. I wasn't sure how bright I should go, so I left it until now so I'd have a better idea of how much it would stand out. Evil Sun's Scarlet was applied in a typical layering method, going over most of what was already there but leaving the recesses the previous colour. Next, I used Wild Rider Red and highlighted the blood drop on the tilt shield, as well as doing a small section of the eye lenses towards the middle of the face. I then did the same again but with Lugganath Orange in a smaller area, trying to keep this part less noticeable. Finally, we're onto the weathering. I used AK's Sepia Paneliner to fill in some of the edges, but then decided to just go ham and do the entire surface, planning to clean up later. Having applied it generously all over, I switched over to clean up these spots around the armour, smoothing out the grime until it's a light stain, but keeping the darker tones in the recesses. To do this, I placed a cotton tip and some thinner, then dried it until there was only a tiny bit left. I then softly applied it over the surfaces I wanted cleaned. These are just generic cotton tips by the way, but there are some specialised ones that you can get that don't fall apart as quickly. After waiting a few minutes for it to dry again, I decided to apply some blood to this model. I used a toothpick and an old brush to sprinkle on some blood for the blood god, which is a glossy red colour. I laid the model down and lightly flicked some of this blood paint onto the model, checking between each application to see if more should be added. I did this a few times from different angles. Sticking with the blood for the blood god technical paint, I manually applied it to the chainsword blade and the knife, building it up in places I thought blood would reach the most. I quickly went back to the sepia pen wash as I missed a spot. Then after that was dry, I did my usual basing method and sealed everything in with an ultramatte varnish. And here we have it, a member of the Angels Encarmine Death Company. This was a blast to paint, though there were many points in this paint job I felt like I was doing the wrong thing. It's important to reassure yourself that while something may look bad at the time, you're looking at a work in progress. If you're going from a recipe where you'll know roughly how it will look at the end, persevere and it should come out okay. If you're experimenting like I am, know that you can always change things later, either by going back or by starting over if you feel like you really need to. 3 main things stood out to me while I was recording this one. The white, the leather and the red. The white armour is literally just white scar, no layering or highlights. It was looking pretty bad into the enamel towards the end, and I knew that was coming, but I just wasn't sure if it would be enough. I think it was though, and I'm fairly happy with how the white armour looks now. The leather, as I mentioned earlier, was an experimental recipe. It looks okay when next to the rest of the model, but by itself I'm not thrilled with it. I'd keep the Mournfang brown, but try a different colour to highlight, though I'm not sure which one I'd use instead. And finally, the red. After base coating with Mephiston red, I had originally wanted to start layering it up straight away, but I wasn't sure how bright I should go, as the white is already fairly bright already. It can be nice to have some contrast between the bright and dark colours, especially to help them not feel bland. Waiting until near the end to highlight was definitely helpful. All this critiquing might sound like I'm being overly negative, but I want to explain my thought process for these things, as it may help you with your projects in some way. I think the finished product looks great, and I did enjoy painting this one, despite the comments I've made. But anyway, that's all I got for this video. I hope you stick around for the next one.